While I am so thrilled and excited to have Christmas decorations in my house, I'm sitting here looking at a nativity scene for my kids, I'm also very, very aware of the level of loneliness that comes in this season, especially between Thanksgiving and the New Year, that people are experiencing in their bodies, in their homes, within their families. And I know there's been some new research to come out about loneliness here in the last couple of years. So I just thought today would be the perfect opportunity for us to discuss that topic and how we can support each other better and how we can even support ourselves when we are feeling lonely. So welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open our emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected in our relationships and in ourselves. I am your host, Tira Wages, and joining me is marriage and family therapist, clinical sexologist, Dr. Glenn Hill, and his incredible wife, Phyllis. Together, they have founded the Connection Codes, which is the guide to human connection, and I'm so glad you're here.
Yes. Hello, world.
Hi, friends. Wow, what a topic. I was thinking about this. I think about this a lot, actually, because I feel like I'm in a season. Well, let me back up. We think of the word loneliness, and so many of us say, oh, loneliness means I am without people in my life. And for some of us, we are constantly surrounded by people. And so you're like, oh, I would do anything to have a moment alone. But that's not the only definition of loneliness. Loneliness is also feeling alone in tasks. I know I experience that a lot, just feeling alone in the responsibility. And you think about even in the holidays, sometimes it's pretty one-sided, where you carry the burden of it's all up to you to make it special. It's all up to you to do all the decorating, to do all the cooking, to do all the shopping, and to create this wonderful experience for your whole family. So you may feel very alone in that. So you got to process that. And then I think, though, probably more of what you were referring to is feeling that loneliness of I am left out. I am alone. I don't have family. I don't have friends. I don't have children. And I think, wow, we're at different times, we're in different seasons. And I was thinking about that as we were kind of preparing for this podcast, because I know we're from a very large family. We have 4 children, 12 grandchildren, most recent addition 2 weeks ago. And they all live right here. So you would go, well, you can't ever feel alone. And it's like, but that's not true, because all of those precious people don't live in my house anymore.
Yeah.
So this mama heart of mine, I do experience loneliness. So it's real. Like I want a house full at Christmas, not just at Christmas, for the whole month. I want a house full who want me to make cookies for them. Even like all the memories I have of wrapping presents with the kids. There's no kids, right? And matter of fact, maybe you shouldn't tell anyone, but I pay someone to wrap my gifts now because there's no joy in it for me anymore. Right? And we also have all these strict rules now where we're not even supposed to be buying gifts for each other, but it's not what it used to be. We're not even going to be together on Christmas Day this year for the first time because our family's gotten so big and they all have children and they all want their own traditions. It's just not practical for all of us, 20 something of us, to be together on Christmas Day. But do you know what that means? Where am I going to be on Christmas Day? Am I going to be alone, Glenn and I, with his mom? You know, like I'm processing that. I'm processing that possibility of loneliness. I want to address it from my own personal, because I know sometimes we miss this with each other because we assume we're all doing really well. We assume, well, you're surrounded by kids and grandkids. Surely you're not lonely. Versus this person over here who's maybe a widow and really has no one, or someone who's just recently gone through a divorce and doesn't have anyone, or whatever that may be.
Yeah.
But like, let's not assume that we're all doing okay. We really need to check in with each other.
Yeah, and I do want to just cover just the science of it, that we know that loneliness fires in the pain region of the brain. And again, since brain scanning became so a commonplace, we can just analyze this now. It's just science. It's not an opinion. It's not a theory. that this person is experiencing loneliness. But a big Connection Codes protocol is that your experience is your experience. Because just as Phyllis said, you might look at us and go, well, you can't be lonely. You could never be lonely, or you're not allowed to feel lonely because that person over there who lives alone, who doesn't have family support, they're lonely. Well, I don't question that at all, that they experience loneliness, but we can just as much too. It's my theory that all of us experience loneliness at some point every day, literally every day of your life. At some point, if we brain scan the whole day, we'd be like, oh, there's a lonely experience right there. And again, as Phyllis mentioned, kind of redefining loneliness is not feeling supported, not feeling included, not feeling a part of this thing. Even if you're a room with 30 people in it, you can literally be lonely in a room filled with 30 people. So it's just the pain experience of not feeling connected, supported, not feeling a part of things, even though you might be sitting in a room with a lot of people.
Yeah, something that struck me a moment ago whenever you started talking is I think also with loneliness that it could be a loss of identity. I picture moments that I have felt really lonely in my life. It is actually often in times where I'm in rooms with other people, but I feel unseen.
Yep.
I feel misunderstood. I feel like they don't actually know me. And maybe they don't even care to know me. And that feels extra lonely as well. And I think you brought up another great point of just like the weight of tasks. I think about couples where oftentimes, and this is such a stereotype, and this is obviously not true for every couple. Well, I'll say one partner tends to be the task person. They need to make sure all the gifts are taken care of and everyone is where they need to go and the menus are planned. And then often there's a different partner that they feel the loneliness. I need to provide all of this. I feel the weight and the responsibility to make sure that I even have the finances for my partner. And both of those things feel so isolated and so incredibly lonely because we don't have the tools, unless you're a connection coder, we don't have the verbiage to be able to communicate, hey, I feel lonely that I'm the only one providing for our family. And that doesn't mean you need to change anything. That doesn't mean you need to go get a job tomorrow. I just need to process that. And I see you. I see all the tasks that you're doing. So I know I'm not alone in this partnership. I just feel alone in this moment, in this area. And if you're the task person saying, hey, I feel really lonely that I'm the only one planning all the gifts, that doesn't mean you need to change anything. I see everything you're doing too. We can see each other and also feel loneliness and not need to change.
Yeah, it's kind of a side note, but I'm always amazed by that. And Phyllis talks about this a lot, that just the processing of the emotion, and we hear this question a lot, this is probably in the top 10 or 15 questions that we get, is that, well, once you share the emotion, then what? That's not going to change anything. That's not going to fix it. And what's bizarre is it kind of does, and it's not a perfect math equation. We humans are too complex for that. But just the processing of the emotion, and Phyllis does this with me a lot, where she's like, I'm feeling some loneliness. And I literally go, oh, what's happening with lonely? What am I missing? She goes, well, I just got a lot of prep to do for everybody coming over tomorrow, and Glenn's in session all day, and my mom's almost 96. She's not quite as productive as she used to be. And so, a tremendous amount of that just falls on Phyllis. Well, that doesn't mean that she's not going to do it. Doesn't even mean that she doesn't want to do it. She just feels alone in the task, and processing through that that pain experience is the power of it.
Well, and I love that there's the fourth phrase though too.
Right.
Because in that moment, you can say, what do you need from me? And Phyllis can say, hey, I actually have these 3 tasks. If you can get these 3 things done to partner with me. So that fourth phrase is really important in these moments as well.
Yeah, and we've done that before, not even necessarily what she needs from me, but just to ask her what she needs. And there have been times where we're like, we have people that work for us. Let's just get them to come an hour early and help do this, whatever the this is. So whereas when Phyllis is flooded with the loneliness and the pressure of the task, it's hard for her to think that through clearly. And when she processes through the emotion, clears out the limbic system, she's able to think clear, and then we're able to co-regulate partner in the decision. They were like, well, wait a minute, we could do this. Well, we just shifted everything. Whereas 20 years ago, Phyllis, again, she's so productive, so powerful, she would just grind it out and get it done, and she'd be experiencing the pain of loneliness the whole time. And now she's able to process through it.
Last week, I think I already said this. We have grandbaby number 12 that just arrived 2 weeks ago. And it was a traumatic birth. So I've been hands-on a lot in the last 2 weeks. And last week I was sitting holding the baby and I just said to two of my girls, I don't think I'm going to decorate this year. And when our house is decorated, it's a lot. Like it's one of those, you can't miss it. Christmas is everywhere.
Yeah.
And I just said that and they both looked at me and were just like, oh, Mom, what is happening? Like, and I just talked about the loneliness. I talked about, because this is the first year too that we didn't have a family gathering where we put the tree up together. First year. And so I just said, I just think I'm going to skip it. Like it just doesn't feel like I have the energy to do this. And my girls were not okay with that. Like, Ma, we got to figure this out. And so one of them said, why don't you have some of the grandchildren come tomorrow? Because it's just a really big job. But I didn't even have the energy to make that happen. And so I came home after being with the baby and with the girls. And I just said to Glenn, I'm really thinking of just not even decorating this year. And his eyes got super big. Like this would be the first time in 41 years of marriage that we would not. And he leaned in, like as in what's happening with that and what do you need? And I realized that the biggest part that I was getting stuck on was getting all of the crates out of our holiday room from the basement upstairs to the main part of the house. And that physically, I can't do it. In processing this emotion, and I think that's my point, like to the listeners today, is the power of processing your emotion gets you somewhere different. It's because I processed and shared. My point is, if I'd have just stayed quiet,
Stuffed it down.
I would have suffered in silence. I would have had so much sadness, but I would have been in my head saying, I don't have the energy to do it. Who cares anyway? The traditions are not even happening this year, so who cares? Nobody would notice. I would have just kept it in my head and gone over it and over and over it. Wow. But instead, because I said it out loud to my girls first, and then came home and shared it with Glenn, then it got us to a place where we were able to see that right now, one of my nephews is staying with us, and he's got all the time in the world, and he's in his 20s. He's just like a gentle giant. And Glenn so easily said, babe, just have him bring it all upstairs. And I'm just like, oh my word. Yes. He was all about the exercise of going up and down the stairs a million times. And it was so fun. And once all of it was upstairs, I couldn't wait to open the crates. And I saw all the special things. And he kept bringing stuff up, and I would tell him where all the little trees went and we have just so many things, not just one big tree. And he just kept putting things into place of where they go. And then I did reach out to someone and I just said, would you do this for me? Can I pay you to help me with this? Because I just don't see how I could get it done by myself. I think, wow, it's because I was willing to process the sad, the lonely, even just, I think sometimes we use the word overwhelmed, but we don't really dig into what core emotion. Go deeper with that. Don't just use the word and move on. Find out what's happening with that.
Right.
And when I kept processing, I realized that a lot of it was I don't have the physical strength to carry these crates, these huge crates up and down the stairs or from downstairs basement up. And so I was just like, well, then we're just going to nix it this year.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I love that when I can see for myself over and over the power of the connection codes and the tools, and that even in sharing that we're not going to be together on Christmas Day. And I support that. I want my children to create their own fun day. But I've also been really open with them all that I'm already experiencing loneliness in the thought. But you know what's beautiful is when you've got kids that are also connection coders, they ooh me really well. Yep. And that doesn't mean they have to change anything. Yep.
And it doesn't mean that they're wrong.
They're right. So they're not important. Wrong. They don't have to, we don't want mom to be lonely, so we're going to go back to the old tradition of getting all of us together. And it's like, no, that it'll be a new thing. It'll be a new year. But I'm just going to keep processing the emotions surrounding it.
Yeah.
And I know that
Wow.
in that, I'll be okay. And even like the shedding of tears, that's great. Just shed the tears and figure out ways to still celebrate. Because now my decorations are up and I love them.
I was going to ask, how much joy have you experienced?
Oh, my
and
word.
together, how much joy have you
So much
experienced?
joy.
Yes.
So much joy.
And we've had so many people come to our home that have just been flooded with joy. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Well, Phyllis, I love that you talk about the fact that you processed it instead of stuffing it down, and that in that processing it, you actually ended up at a much healthier, better, like a joy-filled place.
Joy-filled
Now
place,
you're
yeah.
experiencing, not that the loneliness of the holiday is gone, but you are experiencing joy now instead of making yourself sick with loneliness. And so, Glenn, I want you to share, because there's been new science even to come out about loneliness, and the general surgeon has done research on this as well. If in that moment she had decided, I'm going to stuff instead of share, which is honestly the easier option. It feels like the safe option to do. What would the outcome could have
Well, and I would diverge a little bit, and I'll get to that in a second. But I get it that it feels like the easier version. It's actually not long term because of what you're talking as far as what happens in the body. But if people don't have the tools, and even the term, and I understand what you're saying, but to say if Phyllis chose to stuff, most people don't choose it. It's just automatic. They've been doing it so long, for who knows, 20, 25, 30, 35 years. It's automatic. If you're right-handed, try using your left hand to do stuff. Well, it's awkward. How long would it take you to train yourself to use your left hand? A while. It's just automatic. So I just want to make sure people know that we're not saying you choose loneliness. You choose to make yourself unhealthy with unprocessed emotion. Most of us, and certainly with our story, we just had no idea.
Yeah.
How do you do this thing? I love what you said, Tyra, just that Phyllis just intentionally shared this initially, just sitting with our daughters, and it just set this amazing thing in motion. And I'm a family therapist. I've sat with so many families that whoever, but the mom doesn't share that. So now she resents her daughters for that Christmas season and maybe the next 10 years.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Who knows? All because, and that's part of what I love about the Connection Codes, I think it's the power and the beauty of it. It's so simple and it is so incremental, so implementable, and it's in the moment. So she gets hit, Phyllis gets hit with sadness and loneliness in the moment. She automatically just conveys it, and it sets in motion this beautiful thing. And now her daughters are there for her. They're present with her. They're safe for her. And they help her process through that. They don't go, what? No, Mom. Don't feel fine. Come over. Christmas morning, Christmas afternoon. What? No, they don't have to do that. No, we may end up doing that, but we don't. It's not that we have to fix anything. We're just being functional. Just the last few weeks, we've read a couple of publications from the Surgeon General about loneliness, which this is, I guess as a nation, we're a little bit behind because the Happiness Institute, I believe, is the first official longitudinal study, which is a 30-year study, which 30-year study takes about 32 years to do. So it's incredibly extensive. We read this study in 5 minutes. Well, it took 32 years to do it. So a whole lot went into that. But that the conclusion, which has now been replicated enough that we're pretty confident of the efficacy of it, but that loneliness, living in loneliness, is more damaging to your health than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. We are not trying to sell cigarettes here, but it's amazing to think that what the research says, that if you have to choose between living in loneliness and smoking cigarettes is the better choice. And culturally, everyone says, no, that's not true. Never smoke cigarettes. Again, we're not trying to sell cigarettes. But the research actually is very, very supportive that tobacco use is less harmful than a lack of connection in your life.
It was crazy to me to hear the Surgeon General actually say that, which I know that is the research, but it's, we know how damaging cigarette smoking is. And to hear that stated from our Surgeon General was like, wow. And what really struck me is that he kind of said, we are in a place right now that loneliness is in epic proportions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, thank you for bringing this to light, because I think we are because I believe a lot of it is social media, we only see happy faces. We see that everyone has a perfect life. And yet that's so much of that is total loneliness, right? It's just a picture that says, look at my perfect life. But really that person is super lonely.
Yeah.
And I think even with how we talk about loneliness, because I think when we teach this, sometimes people go that whole idea of, I'd do anything to have a few minutes by myself. And it's, well, let's change the definition. And then when you bring it into how often do you feel alone in the responsibility of X, Y, and Z, they're like, oh my word, I feel alone in all day long. And they're not processing it because they don't even know to call it that.
Yeah.
And then I think too, the other thing about the Surgeon General's report was that he was calling businesses to basically be the place of pay attention and do something about this.
Wow.
And I thought, what company owners know how to do anything
or even
about
paying
this?
attention to that.
Yeah.
Or even care.
But
Sadly.
But even for those who care, how in the world? I just thought it was fascinating. Matter of fact, I circled it and I think I sent it to you, Tara, and we talked about it. Just that if a business owner would read that report from the Surgeon General, and of course it was all on the news channels everywhere, it's like, how in the world am I supposed to do something about my employees' loneliness?
Yeah.
And so to go, actually, if you will implement the connection codes and more specifically, just introduce the core emotion wheel.
Yeah.
If you're a business owner, introduce your people to the core emotion wheel.
Yep.
And we always say to introduce it, you got to be willing to do it yourself. That's the best example, the best teacher, the best way to bring together people. We do it with strangers. And I'm always amazed at how strangers that we do this with for the very first time, how they fall into it. And you learn things so quickly about each other when you just do the core emotion wheel.
Yeah.
And it changes the relationship. It takes it from especially like I think about in a work environment where you've worked with these people all year, and now it's time for the Christmas party, the annual Christmas party. And yet you're like, okay, do I really want to go? I don't know if I really want to go, but hey, the boss is paying for dinner, so I probably should go. But it's that awkwardness of what are we going to talk about? You know, what are we going to do? And to think, oh my word, do the core emotion wheel.
Yep.
Like if you got an hour together, 2 hours together, do the wheel, right? 2 minutes a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've been in businesses, and of course it's thrilling for us to see, but we've been in businesses where they have the core emotion wheel posted in 3, 4, 5 different places. And I know a hairstylist that has it right there, and she says it changes, which I think hairstylists are some of the best therapists around already anyway. But you put the wheel up, and now you're not just talking about news, weather, and sports. You're finding out that you're talking about loneliness. You're finding out from this person sitting in your chair that, oh, wow, this is a really lonely season for them, whether literal Christmas season or just the season of their life. And that's part of the power of the wheel is it just prompts. And I'm amazed at this. We developed this, but I'm amazed for us, our life, for our children, for our grandchildren, the people close to us. The wheel, there's just something about it that the wheel pulls it out. Phyllis and I know the 8 core emotions. We've done this a few times, but when we sit down with the wheel, there's just something about it changes the whole atmosphere and the experience of it. It's
Totally. And I think about the effects that having loneliness, long-term loneliness, especially, is worse than smoking a pack of cigarettes every day. And so I think one of the big points that people need to realize is how to even identify what that feels like. We've given a couple of examples, and it could be, especially for parents this year who have their kids, it's their first Christmas where their kids aren't gathering. It's actually, we are not all gathering at my mom's house this year for the very first time as well. And I think that happens to a large group of people every single Christmas. Or when you're the person at the party and you don't know anyone and you feel unseen, but also if you've experienced great loss, if you've had a really intense year and you feel like no one else understands your experience, you feel alone in your human experience, that is very, very lonely. There's just so many different layers to the tasks that we experience on a daily basis we can experience loneliness in. So being able to really dig deep with yourself to find when those moments come up and what it looks like in those moments so you can train yourself not to miss them. We know that the side effect of loneliness is worse than packing a smoke of cigarettes every day. So it's so important.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. You just said packing a smoke of cigarettes a day.
Oh, did I?
Which I think
Man,
we
my
should put
words
that
have
on
been
a reel.
struggling.
And what is that called when you just put it
My
on
blooper?
a loop? Well, but you put it on a loop and you just play it over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, packing a smoke of cigarettes.
I've been struggling with my words the last couple of days.
Hey, it's a
My
tough
brain's
language.
been
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah, so we know now that smoking a pack of cigarettes
that's what
every
you meant.
day
Okay, I got you.
is worse than loneliness. So being able to identify when that loneliness hits is actually imperative to your health, to your well-being, and therefore to your family. And being able to process that with a partner, with a business person, with your mother, so you can stay connected. And also, I love the core emotion wheel. There's so many aspects of it that are just so beautiful and all of the things that it does. But it helps you not feel lonely just by the act of doing it, because it shows I'm also experiencing shame and pain and hurt and sad. Oh, I'm experiencing those things too. They can be totally different sads, but we both know our human experience ultimately is very similar, and I'm not alone in having those emotions.
Yeah, and we hear from people, certainly in sessions, but we got a Connection Codes got an email this morning that this young woman learned that her husband gets hit with loneliness every morning.
Wow.
With her from some of their experiences. She had no idea, and he had no idea. So it's not that he was lying or hiding from her. He didn't realize that, that's a lonely experience. That's part of the whole point of the Connection Codes, the core emotion wheel, is that it trains people to recognize the core emotions, because we forgot. I think most, if not all of us, forgot them, and we don't even realize that, I've been experiencing loneliness with you for 17 years. Well, I'll be darned. No wonder we struggle. You walk in the room and I feel lonely, which is a bizarre thing. You think, well, no, it must be the opposite. No. For many years, Phyllis would walk in the room and I would feel lonely because I didn't feel seen and heard, and it was very much vice versa. So again, it's not the idea of being geographically alone. It's not feeling connected, not feeling supported, not feeling seen and heard, she said, Tira, and to start recognizing, that's what's happening with me. No wonder I don't get excited when she comes in the room. Of course, then the problem is she sees my non-excitement when she comes in the room. She feels lonely because I don't smile at her when she walks, and it's just this horrible, we call it the cyclone. The cycle speeds up with that unprocessed emotion, turns into a cyclone, and then we've completely missed each other. And all that happens in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And if we get better and better at the wheel, get better and better at connection coding, I recognize that, babe, I just got hit with loneliness. She goes, what happened with loneliness? What did I miss? And we're able to connect. We process through that 8 seconds, 15 seconds. It's amazing to me, the power and the speed of it. This is not, because most of us are like, well, we don't have time to sit down and talk for 45 minutes. No. This is literally 20 seconds. We process through it. That doesn't mean we won't process through it again in half an hour or whatever. It doesn't matter. But we do it on the fly as we go every time. And there's so much power in that, and it just releases. It's inhaling, it's exhaling. We don't have to sit down to exhale. We just do it. That's just how we literally breathe. And then with the emotions, we're doing the same thing.
Yeah. And we teach a lot of that in the Foundations Masterclass. I mentioned identity earlier. I think identity plays such a key part in loneliness, the feeling of being unseen and unheard. And all of that is what is taught in our Foundations Masterclass. I had someone email a few weeks ago. It's like, okay, I've listened to all the podcasts. I do the core motion wheel, but I feel like there's something missing. I was like, well, yeah, there's a whole course that walks you through all of this that's intended for you to do with your partner if they're willing. Otherwise, do it alone because you deserve this. That's the whole reason y'all say this. because you need more tools. The core emotion wheel is so powerful for connecting, but there's these little caveats that we need to understand about how we're showing up in the world. And that's what the Foundations Masterclass teaches with the cyclone and those things. I want to share one quick story before we go into the core emotion wheel today. Is there anything else that y'all have? Well, my takeaways from today is that, man, loneliness is felt in so many areas of our life that we may not even recognize.
Yeah.
And it's felt every single day at different moments. And it is vital to our health that we can tune into those moments and process it with a safe person so we don't end up sick. So we can actually be the healthier, smarter versions of ourselves that we all want to be. And that we recognize that this season is especially a lonely time for people because, one, you're expected to be around a lot of people, and you're also experiencing absence of a lot of people that you're used to being around due to different reasons. So both of those things are happening congruently with each other, and you have more tasks and more need to provide. So it is such a deep season to tune in with each other and especially spend that time doing the core emotion wheel every day. If you were doing it every day and you're like, oh, I don't need to do it every day, we got it now. This is the month to do it every day again. In fact, Wes and I have started doing it at nighttime again, where we do it such good in person now. We've not done it unless it's an issue specific. And he's requested, no, at night we need to be doing it again. And it's been so impactful. So I encourage you to pull it back out, actually take the 4 minutes a day and do that with your partner. And I'm going to take it just one quick step further of just the power of doing this with your children when it comes to loneliness, not only for their own loneliness, but I witnessed a very beautiful moment with my son recently. I shared this with Glenn or an email. He was like, you got to tell this on the podcast. We have kids at my house literally every single day, just a house full of neighborhood children. And of course, there are different moments that they'll hurt each other's feelings or they'll feel left out just because they live life with each other all the time. And I was in my bedroom working on my desk, and there was a kid here, had his feelings hurt because another kid wouldn't play with him. And I heard my oldest son go up and say, hey, if you're feeling lonely, you're always welcome in my room. Like, just come in my room if you're lonely. And one, that my son knows the word lonely.
Yeah.
He knows what that feeling feels like.
Yeah.
And he knows how to recognize it, to invite others in. I think that last step of recognizing it in those other people and inviting them in is just so powerful, and how we can heal the world. Seeing each other and using this language of the core emotion, where that little boy, he was like, oh, I do know what that feels like. And then a few days later, I heard him say, hey, Walter, even if I'm not lonely, can I still go in your room? And Walter was like, well, yeah, sure, you can come.
Amazing.
And now they have this shared language with each other, and they're seeing each other in a new way. And these little 8-year-olds and 6-year-olds are connected in a way that they weren't before.
And I know so many 20, 25, 30, 40, 50-year-olds that don't have that skill. They literally would never be aware, notice another human's experience, and not even really have the capacity to care and do something. I say a lot that I think we can raise a generation of emotionally intelligent humans. And that certainly was not my generation as far as what I experienced. And I think we can. I was just so moved and shed tears now as well. But whenever I first read that, I just wept. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Because first of all, you never know. You do not know that was the moment. And I hear stories all the time from people that literally, because I've been in this field a long time, that say, that day I was going to kill myself. And I dropped a book, and they picked the book up for me, and it changed my life because we connected. And it's so easy for us to go, oh, well, we have to, whatever, go on a mission trip to Haiti to do something good and meaningful. You don't know. Literally, you say to someone, well, you can come to my room. And I loved it that your son even said that. It wasn't just that, if you feel lonely, reach out to me and I'll, be available. But he said, you can come to my room, because your room is so personal. And And we adults need that just as much as an 8-year-old does, to know that I can turn to someone. I'm safe. I am welcome. And I think the vast majority of adults don't have that. They live in what we call psychological isolation, and they don't have somebody to turn to. They don't have a friend that they can go to his room.
Yeah.
They don't have a teammate that they know will be there for them. And that is so intense. And again, that's the essence of loneliness that is so damaging for us. I don't know. I get lit up hearing that. It's so amazing.
Well, that's a good point. And so last night, we have neighbors that we're very, very close to that we haven't seen now in 3 weeks. We live across the street, but with traveling and all of those things, we haven't seen each other. And my kids were at their house playing, because that's what our kids do every day. I ended up texting them. And I was like, it's weird that as adults, we don't just walk up and knock on each other's doors and say, hey, can I play? Yeah. And so I said, I'm about to just I said Milo, my 4-year-old, I'm about to be Milo at your house, just knocking on your door. Hey, can you play with me? And they text back, they were like, come over now. Yeah. And it's so weird, the different dynamic that we as adults, the rules that we have on ourselves versus kids. Yep. When kids want to play, they're literally just running up and knocking on doors and saying, hey, play with me. Wow. Hey, if you're lonely, go in my room. There's just such an arms open wide.
Yeah.
And so I think that does add to the layer of loneliness. I'm here at my house last night by myself. All my kids are gone. And I just want to hang out with my neighbors. Yep. And I didn't feel like I could just walk up and knock. And having that invitation in that moment of realizing, man, loneliness is stemming also just because we aren't sharing what we need and what we desire.
Yeah, I diverge a little bit with you simply because with my friends, I don't want them to knock. I tell my friends, look, if you knock, now I have to get up, go to the door, open the door.
Well, he waved me in.
Just come in. I'm not saying with total strangers. You have to knock with total strangers. But if you're my friend, just walk in.
Wow.
I don't want to have to come open the door for you.
Well, this one thought, it keeps coming to me, so I want to say it. One of the movies, Christmas movies, we were watching last night, and it was the whole movie was really about people who are lonely at Christmas. So it really highlighted that, which I think sometimes we need to see those kinds of Christmas movies to realize there is a lot of people who are really lonely. But this was a particular scene where she had just had a huge fight with her significant other. So she went home to her mom and dad's house, and all of her siblings were there, and nieces and nephews. And so this stranger walked by and saw the scene, and it looked so inviting, like this huge table full of food. I think it was Christmas Eve, full of people. Someone from the family was walking in, thought she was a relative, handed her like, bring this in, can you help? And she just got sucked into this house. And then all of a sudden there was that awkward moment where everybody looked around like, who is this woman standing here, this total stranger? And then she realized, oh my gosh, what have I done? I've walked into someone's house. And so starts to walk out. Well, one person that had just had this conflict with her significant other followed her out and said, no, don't leave. We'll make room for you at our table. And she said, oh no, I don't belong there. And the one whose family it was says, well, why don't we go and have coffee? There's a coffee shop right there. I'll go with you. And she goes, no, they'll miss you. And she goes, they won't. They don't even see me. And that really stood out to me, that she was hurting so badly, but no one in her immediate family, none of her siblings, her parents, all the kids, no one noticed her, that she was hurting so badly.
Yeah.
So instead, she leaves with a total stranger and goes to the coffee shop, and they both pour their hearts out to each other in their pain. They were both in pain. And so I just want to say, I think sometimes we think busyness is what it takes, or activity, or just like, as long as a bunch of people are sitting around my table, everyone's good. No, they're not. And that's what I love about the core motion wheel, the connection codes, is it gives you the tools to actually find out what's happening, and for people to feel seen, heard, because just because you create a home full of activity doesn't mean we're not catching that someone's lonely. Like the fact that Walter's, yes, your house is always full of kids because you live in a neighborhood like that. But the fact that your kids are connection coders and they know how to spot someone who's lonely, and they were able to say, hey, if you're ever feeling lonely, come to my room. That is what we're striving for.
Yeah.
Not just a house where we let everyone in. We need to make sure people feel seen and heard in our house. And we got to go to that level.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really important piece of this. And if you're new to the Connection Coach journey, that's what we're wanting to teach you is not just to be hospitable for the sake of being hospitable, but actually to have the tools to hear everyone at your table and to hear and to know how to show up and well. You're not to be a fixer. You're not to give everyone advice. You're actually to make space for their pain and to hear their pain. That's what people need.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. So now we are actually going to go into the core emotion wheel. So if this is your first time listening, you're like, okay, y'all have been referencing this thing this whole time. Don't worry. We do it at the end of every episode. If you would like to download your own version with a video of Dr. Glenn and Phyllis showing you and explaining to you how to do this correctly. So you're using it to its full advantage. There's a link in our show notes. That's the easiest way to find it. Go to our show notes, click the link. And are y'all going to do it today? Who's going to do it?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I'll go first. Let's see. I do get hit with loneliness, mostly thinking about your loneliness. And you're such a dynamic.
Wow.
One of our granddaughters the other day said, honey brings the energy. And you're just so special and powerful and adored. And my heart just hurts to think, oh, sometimes you do. You don't feel included, supported. And I think I miss that at times because I view you as so dynamic. And there's sadness in that for me. It's like, dang it, I've been with this woman a long time. How do I miss her on that? And I feel fear sometimes in missing you, just not knowing what's happening. Of course, our background was so, I don't know, so dynamic because we're both very powerful people. And it's just amazing to me how much I miss and things where I assume that you're good because you look good, both physically, but also just situationally. You look good and I just miss. And I feel fear at times that, oh, shoot, I'm going to find out, 3 weeks later that I missed on that. And there's some guilt in that and shame kind of go hand in hand. Like, dang it, I'm supposed to be good at this. I'm supposed to be able to see. And certainly as a connection coder, but I mean, as a quote unquote trained vocational therapist, counselor, and yet I miss with you and I feel a lot of guilt and shame when I think I know and then I find out, oh, no, that was way off from what was actually happening.
Wow.
There's anger in that too. Dang it, I've got to be able to slow down. And again, I always assume that you're good because you are powerful and dynamic, which is a great benefit and a terrible detriment because I forget that you're just a human. You're not a cyborg. And to slow down, I love what Tia said about just do the freaking wheel. That's just as true for us as for everybody. Tons and tons of joy. You're so fun. It's amazing. Just getting to be with you, doing anything with you is fun. Even Hallmark movies, if you can believe that. That's actually a fun experience. Hurt when we miss each other and when, especially if I miss you and then our cycle speeds up and just the woundings from that. For so many years early on, I thought that someday we would arrive and to realize we're just pilgrims on the journey and we miss with each other just like everybody else does. I'm just thankful that we're able to not get too far off the highway before we get back on track.
Wow.
I think that's close to 8.
Is it? Let's see. I'll start with anger because I actually felt core level anger this morning, which I struggle with, but felt it just after a negative interaction with you. I really went in the other room and I was like, wow, I feel just core level anger about what I experienced with you, what I felt like you said, whether it was really what you said or not. But I was like, I feel anger. So that was a joy for me because I struggle with feeling anger, core level anger. So I don't want to make that my joy though, but it was a joy experience. Let's see. Fear. I think that just right now, I think about our newest grandbaby had to have surgery yesterday, and I feel sad in that too because I wasn't able to be there. And then fear in that now all the PT, right, that he's got to have after, it's like it's just complicated. And fear that it's going to be too much, that it won't go well. Fear and all that right now with them and all the little steps that should be easy. None of them are easy. Nothing's easy right now. I think this morning hurt with your reaction to me, and just, definitely felt misunderstood. And so I felt hurt in that. Lonely. This whole thing I think I've expressed really well, just my lonely and being able to show up for myself and saying, I feel all alone in this task of getting the holidays, getting the house decorated. But then that I don't want to make that my joy, but joy just that I expressed it and then found some solutions.
Absolutely.
And now our house is beautifully decorated, and I feel the Christmas spirit everywhere. So a lot of joy in that. So many joy points because of the new grandbabies. We have two. One is 2 weeks. One is 3 months old today. And they're so beautiful and precious, and just the miracle of birth, the miracle of babies. A lot of joy in the Christmas spirit that's all around. And I love this season. It is very special to us, to me. A lot of joy there. Joy in getting to process through with Tira our conflict this morning. I love that. I love that we have that relationship and that we can just come to the table and say it all. A lot of joy in that. So thank you, Tira. I have guilt and shame left. I would say the shame is in the inadequacies, like both in just like all the things, the text messages, the emails, the things that I don't get to, that I do feel shame in that. Like I feel that I'm hurting people and I don't want to hurt people. So feel shame when things don't get done and I get really behind in responding to people. The guilt, maybe that's guilt as well. Just I wish our systems were a little more efficient, or that we could always be 100% for everybody. That's probably part of my guilt as well. So is that all 8?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. So the core emotion wheel, by doing this activity, you actually learn what emotion feels like in your body, which then helps you to process it out in real time so you can be healthier, smarter. And the benefit of it as well, which that's the core, is that you can connect with each other. You can now understand what's happening with your partner, with your child, with those that you live in close relationship with, because you are sharing and processing and connecting through it.
Yeah, and the reason we do it over and over and over and over and over again is it's a training exercise so that you recognize it on a Tuesday afternoon at 4:15, which is the human condition. That's what we all need.
Yep, absolutely. And if you are like, okay, I have struggled. We have struggled in our marriage with loneliness. We have struggled within ourselves with loneliness. Like there's a lot happening in my body that I need help with. I highly encourage you to start with our Foundations Masterclass. We are so close to the new year. You know, we wanted to talk about loneliness in this Christmas season, but we can touch 2024. And I remember at the beginning of 2023 reading from multiple people saying the best thing you can learn to do this year is regulate your emotions. That is literally what we are teaching people to do, how to regulate your emotions so you can connect in relationships. And you can do that through our Foundations Masterclass. There is a link in the show notes. And if you use the code podcast, you get 20% off. And I'm telling you, it is worth the investment. You are worth the investment. Your marriage is worth the investment. Your life is worth the investment. And you can invest in that or spend thousands and thousands of dollars on treatments and therapists and all of these extra things. And I'm not saying that those aren't needed at times, but these tools are so affordable for what they do, the impact they make on your life. You cannot compare it to anything.
And I think the good majority of the population now is agreeing that, we need to learn to regulate our emotions. We need to be emotionally healthy. But they have zero tools, zero idea. So they agree with the concept, and the Foundations Masterclass walks you through it incrementally, step by step, so you know exactly how to do this. That's the power of it, which I just get lit up about.
Absolutely. And as always, we are so grateful that you are here. We had someone email today and they're like, I'm so sad because I'm done binging. I'm caught up. And so now I have to wait every week on a new episode. And that just brought us Oh, such a high level of joy to hear that. And so thank you for showing up. Thank you for those of you that have shared it with your friends. If the connection code shows up in your Spotify Wrapped and you're one of our top listeners, share that on Instagram so we can see it and repost it. It brings us so much joy to see that and to see those of you that are listening every week. And we do all of this because
you need this.
You deserve this.
So let's do this.
Let's do this.